it's like a cheat sheet for you. Because I find what a lot of times what trips people up is the translating, like reading that question, and when it doesn't actually say the words speed, distance, or time, how do you know what it's asking for? How do you know when it gives you a number, what is it? When it says, how far did Betty Sue run, how do you know what they're talking about? What are you actually solving for?
Betty Sue.
So this is a cheat sheet. We're going to start down here with distance. We're going to start right in the middle. Distance is the variable. So I do want to point out the difference between a variable and a unit. So a variable, right here, these are the variables. Variables are something that's measurable. What's measurable? We can measure distance. So a variable is, what are you measuring? The variable is, what are you measuring? How do we abbreviate the variable distance? What do we use to abbreviate that? When instead of writing out the whole word distance, what do we write? A lowercase d. And then units. So units are different than variables. Variables are, what are we measuring? We're measuring the distance. The units, right there, that's like, what are we measuring it in? So if we're measuring how far Caleb walks when he gets up from his seat to go sharpen his pencil right there, distance, how far, that's what we're measuring. What are we measuring it in? That's the units. That's the unit. So what are we measuring it in?
Measure the distance of Brady.
We could do that. That wasn't right. Try that. Okay. So if we're measuring the distance that it takes to Caleb to get up from his seat and walk over to the pencil sharpener, that's the distance, that's the variable. What might we measure it in? In meters. That's the base unit for metric measuring distance. Units is what are we measuring it in. Variables, what are we measuring? What else could we measure distance in besides meters? Yeah, sure, centimeters. What else? What else? Kilometers. Doesn't have to be metric. Any units for distance. What else? Inches. What else?
Miles.
Miles. What did you say, Sayla? Inches we have.
Millimeters.
Millimeters. Centimeters. Yeah. Feet. What else? Yards. What else? Light years. Hectometers. Yep, those are all things. Those are all units used to measure distance. Picometers, decameters, decimeters. We've got feet, yards, inches. Those are all units we could use to measure distance. What are some clue words? If a problem doesn't use the word distance, what might it say instead? What? It might say how long is the football field if so-and-so runs this speed for this amount of time. What about how far? What about how far? That's going to be a really common clue word here, that if they say how far, they're asking for distance. It could also say something about length. What's the length of Brogan's morning run if he runs at this speed for this amount of time? Okay, what about time? How do we abbreviate the variable for time? Lowercase t. What variable or what units are we typically going to measure time in? Seconds. What other variables could we measure it in? Hours. Decades.
Minutes.
Minutes.
Seconds.
Seconds over here. Yep.
Centuries.
Centuries.
A billionth of a second.
A billionth of a second. Milliseconds. Picoseconds. Hectoseconds. Millennia. What are some clue words that might not say, if a problem doesn't say the word time, that tells us they're asking for time?
Is light year?
A light year is actually a distance. It's how far light travels in a year. Yeah. What are some clue words? If the problem doesn't use the word time, what are some clue words if they're asking for time? How long?
How long did time stay a little?
Yep. That would work. Okay, last one, guys. Let's finish this up. How do we abbreviate the variable speed? Lowercase s. What units in this class are we typically right now going to use to measure speed? Meters per second. Meters per second. Speed is distance over time. Our units show that, a distance per a time. What are some other units that we might be able to measure speed in? Miles per hour, and I'm going to write it like this. Miles per hour, showing that actual relationship between those variables. Kilometers per hour. What else? What? How many light speed is measured in, well, I mean, you could convert it to anything, but often it's measured in that. But you could measure light years per decade, light years per millennia. How about millimeters per year? Maybe that's that's the speed of a tectonic plate. What about centimeters per decade? Inches per hour, feet per minute. Any unit here could be a distance unit per a time unit. What are some clue words that if a problem doesn't use the word speed, that it's going to tell you to talk about? How fast? Any other ones you can think of? How slow? Yeah, if it says how, sure, I'll write it down. How slow? Any other ones? How quick? Yeah, that works. How quicker? Yeah? Okay.